And so we all kind of move at a certain frequency or vibration, and we have to raise it up if we want to grow.
Hi, everyone. It's Kara Goldin from The Kara Goldin Show, and I am super, super excited to have my next guest here. And I was actually on his podcast, and we are so excited that he agreed to come on mine. Jon Dwoskin here, and he is the founder of the Jon Dwoskin Experience, where he coaches his clients to elevate way beyond the comfort zones and grow their businesses to not just big, but very, very, very big, awesome companies. And he's a keynote speaker and former C-suite executive as well. He's also a cancer survivor and elite trainer. We're going to talk about meditation, I think, a little bit. Yeah. We're going to just get into all kinds of amazing things and insights that he can share to inspire us. So anyway, welcome, Jon.
Thank you.
So do you like being called Jon or Jonathan?
Jon is great. And thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah.
My family calls me Jonathan, but most people call me Jon. Yeah.
That's awesome. So Jon was just talking to me about Hint, my company, and we had sent him a case that Kaye, my assistant, has been so great about saying, hey, you want a case? And introducing people to it. And he was just saying he and the rest of his family hooked on Hint. So we love that.
We love
hearing
Hint.
that.
We love Hint. And with the story I was telling you is my son had a couple of his friends over. And they went in the basement where in our basement we have, water and iced teas, like just kind of a setup.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of out of everything. And so they went downstairs and really we had just a ton of Hint water. And so a lot of the guys were like, this is the greatest thing we've ever tried. This is so good. What is this Hint water? Da, 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 da. And so then they went out and bought some. It was, so thanks. It was great. So I appreciate you sending me some and I bought a ton on my own and I'll Instacart it as well. So it's been great.
Great. Well, it's funny. We, we're in the Bay Area. We're in Marin County, and we couldn't get into a lot of public schools over the years because they had contracts with the, big soda companies. But the private schools, we just started going in and saying, just try it. And it was funny because a lot of the food service directors at these schools said, no, I don't think the kids would like it. And kids started requesting it. And it was just this really interesting, thing. And now we're one of like 2 or 3 other items. And really the Gen Z generation has just kind of eaten this stuff up because they really do want healthier and better for you products. And particularly, you said your son plays a lot of tennis. I mean, athletes want water, right? Yeah. Or they want a product like Hint, which is an unsweetened flavored water for those of you who aren't familiar with it. So it is water.
That's great.
So anyway, so let's go back to you. So childhood. So start there, Jon. Where did all the happy moments and hilarious times come from?
I grew up around a table where we had Shabbos dinner every Friday night. I'm Jewish. And so, we had Shabbos dinner every Friday night. My family, my extended family. My mom was like a comedian. She was hilarious. She kind of would hold court. And we had dinner every night as a family. And I would say as I kind of look back at, the happy, there was a lot of happy times, but those really stuck out for me a lot. Those moments around the kitchen table with family, with friends sometimes, but usually dinner was like kind of for family. It was like my parents would say you can have dinner and then you can go out with your friends after. And those were great times. And we just would talk about, everything. There was, we just talked. And then just sitting back and listening to my grandparents talk, my aunts and uncles talk, and just observing a lot of that communication and interaction and history. And, I often tap into kind of those moments, those memories, the energy of what that is, because many of those people have passed away. And so I miss it, but I feel like I can tap into it when I need it.
I love it. And do you hold dinner for everybody as well? I mean, is it an every night situation for you at your house?
Ish. I mean, we try to have dinner as much as we possibly can together, but it's so hard. My kids' schedules, my son is on the tennis team, my daughter's on playing, taking tennis lessons, my son's taking, I feel like life is busier today than it was when I grew up. And so we do our best to have dinner as much as possible. I would say 3-4 nights a week. And, but we're always eating, but sometimes it's kind of like we're eating on the island together, or, it's not as formal.
Yeah.
It's just harder for some reason, with everybody's
I totally
schedule.
agree. That's why I asked, because that was something that as a kid, my parents, it was just, we always had to be home by dinner.
Yeah.
And, every once in a while there was one of us missing. I mean, I was the last of 5 kids, and so we actually didn't have a giant table. So it was almost better when one person was missing. Anyway, That's another story. But, I totally agree with you with all of these schedules. It's really tough. I started this ritual really by accident, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, when we sort of stopped traveling with our kids because it just became a hassle that we had to have 4 car seats on the airplanes and, strapped in. It was like we were a scene, right? And it was just because my kids were, when I launched Hint, we had 4 kids under the age of 6. And it was a comedy, like the flight attendants would watch us and, go from San Francisco back to New York. And it was just crazy. So
Karen, I just want to say real quick, my son didn't even get on a plane for the first time till he was, I think, 7 or 8, because it was just too crazy once we had our second to even like manage an airplane. We were refusing and, to stop what we were doing. And we took our kids everywhere. And then finally it just got crazy. And we just decided we're not taking them. It's just become more of a issue. But anyway, about 10 years ago, we started, all the kids had a reason for not actually taking off and going on, the vacation. And, some wanted to do this, some wanted to do that. And so basically over really kind of the holidays and the Christmas break, time period, I started planning these trips, and it was, they were pretty significant trips because my kids also go away to summer camp. So I'd never even have them, during the summer. And those 2 weeks are always, my kids still talk about those 2 weeks because we eject them. I typically find places where they're not going to know anybody because for us, California to Hawaii, my kids always know people in Hawaii. Like they'll start texting and then it's all over with. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to go to their house and, they're gone. Yeah. But so I eject them and it's amazing just having that time, that dinner time, and those 2 weeks have really consolidated. So even if it isn't the dinner, even during the week, the stories that come about and finding those rituals. So really, you made me think about that. But I find the same way. I find the same thing though, because I'm so grateful that we've traveled with our kids, not internationally, but because they've still been kind of somewhat young, but we've taken them so many places any chance we could. And I'm so glad we did now that it's kind of like we're living in pandemic world. It's not as easy to just get up and go and plan, family trips. And so, I hear you. Those are key memories and moments.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I remember, just really quickly, it was interesting. My 15-year-old was talking to me about this the other day, that we actually went last holiday. We went on a huge trip. I'd wanted to go. I had a ton of miles, and I had wanted to go diving in the Maldives. I wanted to go for 30 years, and I said, we're going. And I don't tell my family until like a few days before. So they can't like figure out how to get out of it. Yeah. So they were like, wait, how do we get there? We flew through Dubai on the way there. And then on the way home, we went through Singapore, and we had never been there. We were spending a few days in Singapore and running around. So that was the first place where I remember turning on CNN and hearing about the coronavirus. This is the end of January. And it was like, and we were hearing about it. And of course, being in the beverage industry, I'm thinking, I wonder if the Corona family is a little upset about the coronavirus. I mean, that's
absolutely
not good. Right. And we were sitting there in Singapore and they were talking about the Chinese New Year and how people were traveling. And it was amazing. We came back to San Francisco a few days later and we started to really hear about it in Singapore. We came back to San Francisco. Nobody was really talking about it. And we really, and my kids are still like that, those moments of saying, wow, and we were seeing, I mean, everybody was wearing masks in Singapore. It was super hot because it, reverse seasons and stuff. Anyway, but even my kid, like they'll never forget that. Yeah. Right. They'll never forget how different, and they wanted to like look on TV by the time it hit the U.S., they were looking on at Singapore and trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And so again, it brings these experiences where they can really speak to it and you can anyway feel it. So, okay. So getting back to you. So around the age of 13, many of your family members started to get sick. Talk to me a little bit about that.
It was a little crazy. There was a lot of turmoil. So as I was sharing with you, a lot of laughter, a lot of, family. My family grew up very tight. But kind of from the age of about, I would say 13 till about when I was 25, it started with, my grandma, which made sense, who, got brain cancer and then passed away. My aunt, my mom's sister, who died at 41, at a very young age. She had cancer, and then my grandfather, was healthy and then had his leg amputated and moved in with us. And then he passed away. And then my mom, was sick. When I turned 13, she was diagnosed with a disease called alpha-1 antitrypsin, which is you're born with basically a protein not in you're lacking a protein. So you're basically born, long story short, with emphysema, but you don't know till you're 35. So she battled that for a while. She passed away when she was 51. So it was like this insane 13 to 25 of just, still trying to kind of keep the laughter up. And my family was tight, but just a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos.
Wow. And so it was, how many kids in your family? It was you.
So it's me and my brother. And then I have a cousin who I refer to as my sister, but it's really my brother and I. Yeah.
Wow. And so you're, at 18, your dad gives you the Brian Tracy's The Psychology of Success.
Life changer, Kara. Absolute life changer.
And talk to me about that. This is
wild. It wasn't until I was in my early 30s, 31, that I knew I was dyslexic. And school was scholastically so difficult for me. Just the studying and the retention and the taking a test was just so difficult. But I just kind of did what I needed to do. I mean, it was, a while ago. So, but at 18, my dad said, "Hey, I know you're going to do well in college. If you get below a 3-point, you're coming home, but I know you'll do well in college, but I think you'll learn more from these types of tapes and people like Brian Tracy than you will college." And so little did I know that after when I was, the reason I'm fast forwarding 31 is when I took this IQ test, and I'll get to that in a second, it said that I always thought I was more visual than auditory. It said that I was primarily auditory. So I put these on my ears when I was 18, and I thought, not only did it resonate the moment I listened to the first couple words, and I thought, this is exactly what I want to do for a living. I want to coach companies. I want to write books. I want to speak. I want to help people reach their potential. But I could also retain what I heard at such higher rates. So it was like I could read a book, love the book, and then I could like summarize it in like a sentence or two, but I couldn't retain it. And then it would come to me like I'll be coaching now even, and I'm a huge reader. I'm a huge Audible listener and a huge reader. And I'll read a book and I'll be like, wait, what did I just read? And then I'll be coaching someone, and everything I need to know in that moment for that client will download to me in that moment. And it's like all these thousands of books that I've read, even though sometimes I can't retain them in the moment to like write a paper about them if I had to. But as soon as I need it, it kind of clicks right into me. And so I had listened from 18 on up until today. I listen every single day to something.
Hmm.
And so I became obsessed with just self-learning all through college. I mean, all through college, I would be walking to class, working out, listening to these tapes. I couldn't get enough. It was like a drug.
Wow. That's amazing. Do you still recommend those tapes? Like what is it about those in particular that really had you engaged?
As a business coach, I do my best to break things down to the simple. And I felt like so many of the people that I listened to, the Brian Tracy's, the Jim Rohns, the Tony Robbins, I could go on and on and on. They all break things down to the simple. And it's just kind of how I think. I'm always kind of reverse engineering to the simple. And and so to me, it's like things shouldn't be complicated. The fundamentals of things, it's one of my favorite sayings are, it's so simple, it's complicated. And so I see things intuitively down to the simple. I always have. And so like when I'm in chemistry and when I was pre-med in school, I ended up, dropping every pre-med class but it didn't make sense to me, the classes I was taking, because I always felt like this isn't simple. Like things should be somewhat simple. And so for me, it resonated with me because everything that I was thinking, everything that I was trying to process or put into a framework, it was doing it for me. And it was saying, oh, this is simple. And you can actually make a business out of teaching people too simple.
That's amazing. And so you didn't know this in college that you wanted to ultimately do this though, right? I mean, I knew
when I was 18. I knew the minute I put it on my ears. I thought this is exactly what I want to do. I didn't know the path that I would ultimately get to, starting an internet company and selling that to the largest internet professional service firm in the world and doing real estate and commercial real estate and doing all the things that I did, the twists and the turns to get to the point. But I always knew it was my landing. It was my bedrock of where I wanted to be.
So after school, you talked about pre-med for a second, and you decided not to do that. And
I think it decided not to do me, more or less. Yeah.
Interesting. So what did you end up doing after school?
So I graduated. I went to Eastern Michigan. I graduated with a double major in journalism and economics. And I wanted to go into broadcast journalism. I wanted to be the next Larry King and Dan Rather. Read all their books, worked at the local Channel 7 at the assignment desk for a year. And then I went to Israel for 3 weeks after I graduated college. I was at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I walked by this conference room, and it stopped me dead in my tracks, and they were smoke. I mean, I'm going to be 49 this year. I was 23 at the time, 22. And they were sitting there smoking and negotiating and screaming at each other and yelling and I just sat in the door and I thought, this is what I want to do. So I decided at that moment, I want to start a business, and I had no idea really what that business would be. I came home from Israel, did not get the reporter job from Cadillac, Michigan, Channel 9 and 10. They turned me down. I made it to the final 3. And my brother and a buddy of his were at my house talking about they're going to start this internet company. This was in, early 1995. So I said, listen, guys, I want to get into business. I'm giving you the long story short. Make me an equal partner and I'll do the sales. Right? And who knew what the internet was in May 1995? Right?
I did, barely.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Well, you were at AOL, and right. So they said, okay. So we each kind of had our role, and we built a business to over 300 clients, about 24 people. And 2 years later, we sold it to a company, which you probably remember, called US Web.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they bought our company, and
just tell the audience what the name of your company was.
The name of the company was Online Marketing Company, and we had grown it to about 300 clients, and we're getting a lot of recognition locally. And then they came in and bought us. They were at the time the largest internet professional service firm in the world, and we were partners in this group. And I was 25 years old, and it was the most incredible experience and the worst experience because we went from this ma and pa feel to this huge corporate element, and I loved it. Couldn't have learned, we talk about reading. I couldn't have learned anything I learned in a book, on a tape, or anything. It was like real life, just like thrown right in the trenches. And I did that for a few years until my contract was up, and then I left and got into commercial real estate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All these steps along the way, I'm constantly, I feel like our house is a house where there's so many Gen Zers and, my kids don't want to hear from me anymore, but their friends do. And so they're always asking me these questions. And, I just think I'm such a huge believer in the journey. I mean, you talked about that first job that you wanted so bad, and, and if it doesn't work out, I'm a bit zen about stuff today.
Me too.
Like, it hurts sometimes initially. And, but I also, believe that you got to go back if you really want something and give it another crack. And, and, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And then you move on.
Yeah.
Right. And and it sounds like that's sort of your theory as well. And
absolutely,
especially, along the way. And so you get into commercial real estate.
I just want to say one comment on that, because my passion was always these tapes and teaching and learning and growing. So I put that into my internet business. Like, I led the sales. I grew the sales team. I would implement things that I was reading and listening to every single day. I was the one kind of leading the way with our business plan for my business partners. And so I kind of took the piece of me that I really wanted to grow and put it into that. And then when I got into commercial real estate, I did the same thing. I thought, and because my grandfather was in real estate, I grew up and idolized him, and he was in real estate. And so I always wanted to get into real estate. And then how that happened was completely by accident. Kind of by accident. I've been wanting to get into real estate for many, many years. And I was diagnosed at the age of 30. I just gotten married 9 months prior. My wife and I were ready to have kids, and I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. Mm. And so I thought, man, this is not great timing. We have kind of this, these plans and things to do. And so I got my blood test, and I was waiting. I had a day and a half to find out what stage cancer I had. And in that moment, I thought, you know what? I've been wanting to get into commercial real estate. It's been a passion for a long, long time. And so, I'm praying to God, if I just make it, let me get through this, and then I'm going to get into commercial real estate. Turns out I had a stage 1, 17 treatments of radiation. And while I was going through radiation, a deal of my grandfather's that he used to talk about all the time came back to life. This is now 30 years, 40 years later. Some random person calls my brother and says, I'm the attorney on such and such deal. And my brother comes and goes, what are we supposed to do with this? I said, call this guy that we both mutually know. They end up going to lunch. My brother says, meet us for lunch. I said, Jeff, I have radiation treatment right before. I cannot meet you for sushi. I'll puke all over. Meanwhile, I did. I went to radiation, and then I ended up driving to this sushi restaurant, which even as I talked to you about this, Karen, it was almost 20 years ago, I still can smell it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was gross. Anyway, the guy was in commercial real estate. And so he said, you should get into commercial real estate. And I said, well, you do leasing. I've always wanted to kind of sell commercial buildings. And he's like, well, that's what I do. I just started a new company. I said, anyway, long story short, I interviewed. I got the job. I was a broker for 6 years. I sold apartment buildings in Michigan. And then after 6 years of that, I got relatively restless and bored. I wanted to start my business coaching business. Yeah.
And all the dots finally connected.
No, not yet, because the universe wasn't ready. So the guy who was running my office came into my office and said, hey, I need somebody to take over this office. You want to take it over? And then I'm going to get promoted. Long story short, I interviewed for that job. They gave me the job. I started August 4th of 2008. The market crashed. In September of 2008, my office was just flatlined. And then over the next 6 years, I was able to take all my tools and grow my office to one of the top producing offices in the entire company, grew it back to 45 agents, 60 some people overall. I was on the CEO advisory committee. I was a national and regional trainer, and I was able to really have a lot of autonomy to grow my office and do all the stuff that I love to do.
And what do you think it was that allowed you to grow the office versus people before you?
Well, the guy before me did grow it, and then the recession flattened it, right? But I think what got me to grow it out of the recession, because it literally, our pipeline went to zero overnight, and in September, of 2008. But I think what got me to grow it is all of the training that I had done. I had 2 business coaches. I had a business coach and a communications coach. And sheer resilience and a lot of prayer. It was the first 2 years of that was the most anxiety-ridden stuff I had ever been through, because I had this office of guys who many I had to kind of ask to leave. Some had to be let go. If they weren't going to work, I had to clean up the office for the people who were going to work and weather the storm. Mm-hmm. And some of these people raised me in the business, and now I'm running the office. And so there were people that, I was friends with that all of a sudden turned against me. There were people that, liked me, but they didn't want to listen to me because they thought I was too young in my mid-30s to even give them advice how to get through a recession. So I got myself into a discipline of studying every single person every single day and creating a business plan of each person. I treated each person like their own company. And I thought, how can I grow my relationship with each person 1% every single day, and take all the tools I had been studying and continued to study.
I love it.
And then, when I left, because I left to actually start my business, but ended up going in-house for a year to help turn around a company, and then started my business now 6 years ago. I said this, and I didn't say this arrogantly or narcissistically at my lunch that they gave me on my last day. But I said, someone says to me, what's one of the greatest things of the last 6 years? I said, when I first took this over, the market crashed a month later, 4 or 5, 6 weeks later. There were some of you in this room that didn't want anything to do with me, and some of you even that hated me. And then, of course, I always had my supporters. But I said, I leave here where and I don't say this narcissistically, you all really love me. We did this. We got through this together. And I really believe that I was a part in helping them all become better versions of themselves and helping them. And that's what I love to do. That's what drives me. Getting people just to the next step of their potential and the pebble that's in their way. Because a lot of times I can see what they cannot see. I can hear what they cannot hear, and I can guide them to their next steps. And that's what I get to do now every single day.
I love it. Well, I think that just being a leader that actually shows interest in each individual person, as well as, talk about simplicity, right? Yeah. It's just, it makes, such a key difference, and actually understanding, I think I've given many, many interviews about managing during a pandemic, because as you know, I still run a company and do this for fun. But I feel like at times I'm a den mother, during this time, and even people who I thought I really knew well prior to the pandemic, there's just different issues that are breaking issues. So there's, some people have kids. Some people don't live with anyone, and it's really lonely, and and it's just really understanding what each individual is going through. And it's not about, the e-commerce team versus the, customer service team. It really is about each individual. And I think that a lot of what you talked about really resonated with me for sure, because I think it really, no matter what the time is, I think it's really, really key to really understand, who are these people? Yeah. And, what are their stories, as well. So, what
also, I just want to say one thing on that. I think it's also, as a manager of people, which, we both have been, et cetera, not taking anything personally. It's, people are going through their own things, and it's, I think I had learned this lesson. My wife and I were reading Eckhart Tolle's book right before I got into management, A New Earth. And Oprah was having kind of weekly sessions on it. So we would read it, and then we'd listen to Eckhart and Oprah do it. And then I just happened to get into management. And one of the things that he talks about is really kind of rewinding and seeing yourself as an observer. And also, I don't know if he said this particularly, but at the same time, I learned the importance of responding, not reacting. Which is, and I think with people, it's hard, but as a manager, you have to respond and not react, because you just have to kind of create a safe space for people to be in their element, but you have to kind of you have to meet them where they are, but be a frequency above and a vibration above, to not fall into, something that you have to take clean up and can never get your trust back again.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. I was on a talk yesterday and was listening to Kevin Mayer, who, used to be I guess his most recent thing was he was the CEO of TikTok for a minute and, but was at Disney for a long time. And he was in charge of M&A at Disney. Anyway, it was really fascinating to hear something that he talked about different leaders that he's met, everybody from Steve Jobs with Pixar and, and George Lucas and what is the similarities and with these people. And anyway, it was super interesting conversation. But the one thing that really makes me think about that conversation, something that you just talked about too, was that figuring out what these people care about. Like when Pixar was getting acquired by Disney, he was saying that the thing that Steve Jobs really cared about was keeping Pixar email.
Yeah.
He wanted, and like everything else was negotiable, but he felt that that would be the end of the end.
Yeah.
And, and he said that it's figuring out on that other side of the table, like who these people are and what they really care about. And for him, it was about that the brand and the identity and that and you can see it with Apple, right? I mean, it's just, it's stuff that it's the simplicity and the stuff that they care about and everything else, the price and everything. So once you actually know that though, about a person, right? It actually allows you to kind of tell your own story about that person. But anyway, it was made me think about that.
Thank you.
Amazing. So your motto is ready to get unstuck and grow your business big, very big. What do you think is the key thing when people are looking at, they hear about you, you're a great coach, they, want to sign up. What do you feel is the challenge, right? That by the time you end up getting that email or phone call from somebody, what is sort of the first one? Like, I don't really need a coach, but.
Yeah, some people say that. By the time people call me, they typically know they need a coach. And I think the first step is just surrendering and raising awareness, right? I'm a big believer that the same level of consciousness that got us to where we are cannot get us to where we want to be. And so we all kind of move at a certain frequency or vibration, and we have to raise it up if we want to grow. Mm-hmm. And part of that is surrendering and allowing somebody to come in, ask you a lot of questions, be really vulnerable, and open up. So, until you get to that point, and on top of that, be ready to do the work, then it's not time for a coach yet. Because a coach can be great and you can have the best coach in the world, but if you don't take it and then execute and implement, then it doesn't work. And so for me, getting unstuck is, I would say most people call me and they say, Jon, I'm stuck. Like, I need to get unstuck because I've gotten to a certain point, or, I have business partners that I can't talk to. I don't have anybody to talk to. People that I'm managing don't like me. My managers, don't know how to manage people. One of the first questions I ask people are, how many managers do you have? And did you hire them because they were good at their job or because you interviewed them as managers of people? Do they have experience? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they'll say, we hired them because they were good at their job and now we're in trouble. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I find companies, they don't invest in training their managers. They don't invest in training their salespeople. They don't invest in training their leadership teams, their C-level suites. And so all of these things kind of, when it's all happening, they bubble up and then everybody kind of feels stuck. And then if you have a leader at the top who isn't clear with their messaging and isn't clear with the direction and isn't living the values and the vision that are on their walls, then you run into a lot of problems because then everybody's not only not getting trained, but they're just trying to kind of just get through the day to make the owner happy or the person they report to happy. And so a lot of times I will be working with C-level suites, owners of companies, C-level, the C-level group, VP of sales, salespeople, and managers, sometimes all of those groups within one company. And I say, okay, I tell everybody the exact same thing. I do no contracts. I guarantee my value. If at any time you don't feel the value, don't pay me, stop using me. And I guarantee what I do. And if within the first hour you don't find ridiculous value, then we can just say our goodbyes. But to me, the first hour, that first step is I start asking them questions that open them up. Mm-hmm. And then I start pointing out things, and I can type as fast as I can talk. So I take a ton of notes when I'm talking to my clients, and I start diving into things and giving them direction and then reverse engineering an action plan for them to take simple steps to move forward.
So it really is about organization. I mean, I think most coaches, it's the same thing. It's actually figuring out, I think that the interesting thing about you versus some of the other coaches that are out there, and not totally dissing on the industry, but there are a lot of coaches that actually haven't had C-suite experience.
Correct.
Right. And built organizations and built different types of organizations too, at different sizes. So I think that that's what's, you can talk about vulnerability and all of those things, and that's important, and that's fine. But I think that it's also oftentimes people really need to understand what they could be doing differently inside of an organization and how they can be sort of the instrument to go do that.
I say to a lot of people, they'll say, well, what differentiates you? I'll say, well, I'm a business coach that's actually been in business. I've had a business, sold a business, grown other businesses. I've sold my company, walked into a conference room 2 weeks after my mom died, where my boss said to me, your numbers are down, get them up. And I said, my mom died 2 weeks ago. It's been a little hectic. And he looked me straight in the eyes and said, I said, get your numbers up, get out of here. I've been in those situations. I've been in a situation where we sold our company. We then went public. We get a call that says, get your numbers up, X% within the next 2 weeks. We have to report out to Wall Street. Click. Right. And then you have to figure it out. Yeah. And so, and I could name 1,000 other instances that I've actually been in. I've been in an office, like I was saying earlier, where I took over as a manager, and there was a percentage of people there that had no respect for me, that I had to earn their respect. I had to be a value add to them, and I had to build it from scratch. And so, I think unless you've been in those situations, it's really, really hard to coach somebody, because my coaching is custom for every single person that I coach. I mean, I coach one-on-one mostly, but I also started some coaching groups as well, because my father was a dentist. He never turned a client away. If somebody came to him and said, Mark, I need $10,000 worth of work, but I have no money, he would say, pay me $20 a month for the next 10 years. And so I never liked when people come to me and said, I can't afford you. It bothered my soul. And so about 3 months ago, I launched a private coaching group that can fit into everybody's budget. And it makes my soul feel good, because I can, I think there needs to be an energy exchange of money if you're getting a service. But now it's something that I can do for people.
I love it. So going back actually to, you're also an avid meditator. How does that fit into coaching? I mean, you talked about some real stressful conversations that can occur when you're working, especially in companies that are either high growth or going through a nosedive, or, where there's stress. I mean, what do you see in being in meditation that has really helped you?
Meditation has been a game changer for me, Kara. When I met my wife, I was about 26, 27 in Chicago, and through life, I had gotten all these ailments. Like I became lactose intolerant. I couldn't eat certain foods, and yada, yada, yada. Nothing I was born with. I just think stress kind of brought some of that stuff on. I'm not a doctor. I'm just making that assumption. And so I met my wife. She's living in Chicago. She's from Detroit. We meet in Chicago. I'm in Chicago with friends. I see her walking out of a restaurant. I ask her out, and then boom, we knew immediately we were meant to be. So I'm there. I would go there for, weeks on end and stay with her in Chicago. And she said, you got to come with me to see my holistic doctor. So I went to this holistic doctor who would realign my energy. And then boom, I wasn't lactose intolerant. Boom, all of these things, he started kind of helping me heal. And so he taught me how to meditate. So he taught me how to meditate a minute at a time. Fast forward now a few years, I'm meditating every day. And through meditation, I was meditating religiously. And I said to my wife, Joanna, I think I have testicular cancer. And I just had a physical. And she said, oh, you're crazy, because I was reading Lance Armstrong's book at the time. And I said, no, I can just sense it. My meditations went black. Something's wrong in my body. So I went to a couple different doctors, and then I went to a new internist. And I did. I had testicular cancer. And I really believe that meditation saved my life, that there was, because I had given myself the space of quiet, I could tune in to my instincts on a much, much higher frequency. And so ever since I learned, I've been meditating pretty much every day. And some days it looks differently than it does others, because some days I have 20 minutes every morning. Some days I just have 5 minutes. But I'm incorporated through my days as well. The power of breath is so critical. We take about 7.5 million breaths a year. And so many people don't take time to just study it and relax. But there's nothing that can get you out of fight or flight faster than 5 deep breaths. And so I'm a big fan of starting every day with meditation.
How long do you do it, and do you use an app?
So I do not use an app. I do transcendental meditation predominantly. I also took a class many, many years ago on the Silva Mind method. So sometimes I'll do that. And sometimes I just take 10 deep breaths. Like sometimes I can't get into a space where, TM or Silva Mind method just are not resonating with me in that morning. And I used to feel guilty about it, but now I just kind of, respect the space I'm in, and I'll take 10, 15, 20 deep breaths, but always for, I would say, a minimum of 3 to 5 minutes. But typically, ideally, I love doing a good 20-minute transcendental meditation every morning.
Interesting. Do you do that before you work out, or?
So the first thing I do when I wake up at around 5:30 in the morning, is the first thing I do is meditate, and then I have a gym in my basement, and then I work out.
Interesting. So you're not too zen before you go and work out. It actually helps you center before you.
Yeah, it helps me a lot.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Good, great practice. So,
but real quickly, an app that I do have that I bought for my family is Calm, which I think is a great app.
Yeah, I've seen all their. I actually have tried Calm before, and I do like it. I do like it a lot. So it's interesting. I mean, I think in many ways I go out hiking. I live my house backs up to 100 acres of woods, and so it's my meditation actually, and nature and birds and seeing stuff. So, but I find in so many ways that if you don't have that, I remember when I was living in the city, and even when I was traveling a ton too, it's just, turning on some of those different apps and just doing that really, really helps to center you. So I love that. So you host the Think Business podcast with the myriad of self-help and business education. How do you deliver, what is the promise to consumers who are listening?
Yeah. The promise is that it's going to be like a mini master's class every time I interview somebody. The interviews are, I just ask a lot of questions. I don't prep questions because I want it to be an organic, real conversation as if somebody is sitting there.
I've been there.
You've been there, right? Yeah. I mean, and so I want it to just be real. I love to listen to people, and feedback I get from other people are great questions, great guests, great content. People are really real. I do my best to bring out just great content from my guests. And I want people to not only think big, but think forward and really think consciously. I end with kind of a speed round, and some people are like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and this and the other. But I kind of want that because I don't want the podcast to be perfect. I don't want it to be scripted. I want it to be imperfect, and I love it. I do lives Monday through Friday and recorded. It's a 7-day-a-week podcast, and it's a total passion project. I love it.
I love it. That's so great. So before we part, I'd love to discuss your book, The Think Big Movement, Grow Your Business Big, Very Big. And your book is awesome. It's super, super great. And how do you know a fable was the best way to convey your message because it's written, not to give too much of it away, but it's written in a very unique way. I love it.
Yeah. So I love The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. I've had him on the show a bunch of times. I love The Alchemist. I mean, those are two of my favorite books. I've always loved, so many of the books that are written as fables and parables that I wanted a business book that was easy to follow through story. I think people learn really well through stories, and lessons. My next book is not going to be a fable, but this one, I wanted to have my first one as a fable. And I just wanted to tell a story. The only way I can describe it is, the books that influenced me, I just felt like there was a story that I wanted to share with the characters in it that I wanted to kind of bring to life. And the essence of the book is really about somebody who is stuck and how you need to kind of be open to the universe. And if you are, all the guides that you need will come by and help you, and they will guide you along the way. And so that to me have been books that have been really inspiring to me and keep the interest going, because there's always kind of a new character. And I think people can relate to, all the names, like my best buddies in it, are the names of who they are the names in the book, so, and I don't know, I think somebody who reads it will get unstuck, get ideas. There's lots of business strategies and tactics in it, but told in, I think, an easy to read way.
Yeah, no, it's really, really terrific. And I love your choice of books too, because those are some of my favorites too. So everyone, if you love this episode like I did, definitely give it 5 stars. And thank you so much, Jon, for being here. You're very generous and showing your authentic nature, and so inspiring. And we'll see everyone here every Monday and Wednesday. And before signing off, I want to also talk about fear. Everybody knows that that's something that I'm a huge believer that we all need to kind of face. And while you can call people fearless leaders, I think more than anything, everybody's a little nervous, right? And everybody's scared. Yeah. And Jon talked a lot about, just even people who get coaches are scared of things along the way. And they may not even realize, right, that they've got this fear living inside of them. And, as you know, Jon, my book Undaunted came out, and I've heard from so many people that
such a great book.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been really great to hear from people that it's more than just how I built Hint with my incredible team, but also talking about, it's not easy, and every day is a new challenge, and puzzle pieces are missing constantly, and then more thrown on the table, as I always say. So I think more than anything, it's just about going out and trying and living your journey and doing, what you enjoy. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. So if you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight, please send me a tweet at Kara Goldin. And again, if you like what you've heard, please leave me a review on Apple Podcast as well. And you can follow me on all social channels at Kara Goldin with an I. And thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks again, Jon.
Thank you, Kara.